Okay, perfect. Thank you. All right. Well, good afternoon. Thank you for having me here today. And see a lot of familiar faces out there, or not faces, but names out there. I'm Cindy Brennan, and as Simone mentioned, I'm the newsletter editor for the Sonoma County Genealogical Society's monthly publication. And today I have the real pleasure of introducing you to some treasures in Sonoma County that you may or may not know about. As we go through these, you will notice a lot of integration and crossover in the various local resources. And I will point that out because there are often multiple ways to access this amazing information. Also, if I mention a link or site, it is definitely in your handout. And the meeting is also being recorded because there's some pretty intense slides with a lot of information, so you can always go back. So let's get started. Let's begin with our local Sonoma County Library's special collections, which encompasses all 4 collections pictured above. All of the collections have both a physical as well as a digital presence. Today, we will cover the Sonoma County History and Genealogy Library and the Sonoma County Archives in more detail. But before that, let's begin with a few examples that reflect the Sonoma County Library's special collections in general. When you click on the link from your handout entitled Digital Collections Overall Access, and then browse all, and then expand on the digital collection name, and I've pointed with the red arrow above to an example, you will find that many items are actually digitized, such as some of the early Sonoma County high school yearbooks and student publications. This student publication above is from Healdsburg from 1905, and I was surprised to see that it even covered some of the diseases that the students succumbed to. You can see that Howard and Evelyn were taken down by the mumps, and poor Laverne with typhoid fever. Then when you click on the link from your handout to the archival collections A through Z, you will find a huge collection of records, including family records, school records, legal, business, court, and more. I just picked a random one to demonstrate what is available. The Felta school records includes a rich background of where the school was and that it was constructed of cobblestones. The collection actually contains student registers, and you can click on Contact the Sonoma County Library, as you can see by the red arrow above, for access to actually view these records in person. Now, don't overlook reading the background for any of these records, as that can give you a lot of preliminary information and the names of those who are part of this collection. This link from the special collections was pretty cool. The historic map viewer is hosted by the City of Santa Rosa and contains over 35,000 images dating from 1942 to 2018. Once you get to the viewer, you can click on any of those orange triangles to see photos taken in that location. 2 examples are above. The store on the bottom of the slide is 106 A Street, and this was the home of a very, very favorite Italian market called Traverso's. On the upper right is 8 A Street, which was the Western Hospital Association's home. The historical map viewer also has a slider scale at the bottom of the page, so you can actually view Santa Rosa over time. When you zoom in, it is pretty fun to see what neighborhoods were there and what was yet to come. Before I leave this section, I happened to stumble on the cumulative index to Sonoma County Historical Society's newsletters from 1962 to 2020. If you have any interest in people, places, and events that took place in Sonoma County, this is an absolute must-see. Once you click on the link from your handout, you can go to the index and at the bottom of the page, choose the first letter of the word you wish to search, or you can just scroll down and see all the entries. And you can search by a name, a place, or a topic. In this example, I chose Juanita Coates from the index. It gave me the publications that she was listed in the red square above. And then simply by clicking on the links that appear in blue above, it took me to the full publication to read about Juanita. You can even download a copy for yourself. Included in the Sonoma County Library System Special Collections umbrella is this large treasure chest known as the Sonoma County History and Genealogy Library. You might also hear me refer to it as the Annex. And do you know how lucky we are to live close by this unique library that is situated right behind the downtown Santa Rosa Library? You will see on this slide some of the offerings they have. There are a lot of digitized resources as well as wonderful help from the librarians and genealogy volunteers if you come into the physical location. Specific searches in the History and Genealogy Library is a real highlight of being here today. Simone kindly provided invaluable links to easily access some wonderful treasures at the History and Genealogy Library. I will introduce them on this slide, and then we will look at some examples. The first link is to Sonoma County Genealogy. The second is to Sonoma County History. And the third link is to California Genealogy. When you find a publication that you are interested in at the link, you will be able to see where it is located. Most of these are not digitized, so they will be at one of the library locations or the archive locations. Now let's look at an example from the Sonoma County Genealogical link. And one of my favorite finds were the books compiled for the small and family cemeteries. Many are located on the shelves of the History and Genealogy Library, and some are tucked away into envelopes, like this one in the photo. This one was put together by Jeremy Nichols on the Thompson Family Cemetery, but there are many, many more. It had Bible entries, an in-depth family history, as well as grave markers and locations. From the history link, I tend to get lost in the historical atlases of Sonoma County. The Annex has a number of them, including some very, very large copies. These are such a wonderful way to look back at Sonoma County. In addition to a lot of other information, there are hand-drawn pictures of businesses, homes, farms, and people. The nice thing about this one is that the picture above is from the 1877 atlas, and it is actually fully digitized, and you can actually even download a copy to your own computer. The third link was for a California genealogy search. Are you looking for genealogy newsletter collections from other places? Well, the variety of what exists here at the History and Genealogy Library is amazing. I've shown an example from Orange County, California on the left above, but you can also see from my photo that they have newsletters from Seattle and New Mexico. And when you get to the library, you'll see that there are many, many more from both California and all over the United States. Although the Annex has a tremendous California collection, they also have an impressive collection of books and publications from around the United States and the world. Now let's focus on the publications available from the Sonoma County Genealogical Society within the History and Genealogy Library. We are going to take a deeper dive into some of these documents. Your handout contains two links. One is a link to the Sonoma County Genealogical Society's books and publications that they authored and created. These are extremely useful as you can find a family member and then actually be guided to where you can get a copy of the original document. A couple of examples shown above are the indigent records and the 1930 school census for Sonoma County. The second is a link to anything that contains the words Sonoma County Genealogical Society and includes publications like the marriage affidavits. So let's take a look at a few. Sonoma County recorded all of the requests from indigent people who requested assistance. The index is in 2 volumes and covers the years 1878 to 1926. Volume 1 lists the indigent person and their information, and Volume 2 lists the taxpayers who had to vouch and certify for the indigent person. As an example from the Indigent Index book, you can see the information was quite detailed, including the reasons for the request, the level of sobriety, and ultimately any amount given to the person. If you find someone of interest, the true treasure is that you can request the original records at the History and Genealogy Library, and they will be delivered from the archives, which are off-site. So that's exactly what I did. I chose 2 examples, and those are reflected by the red arrows, Mary B. and Samuel Bemis, and they had both made multiple requests. Here are examples of what I got with the actual original documents. Mr. Samuel Bemis, I got his full application, and that included information on his living arrangements, family informations, reasons for the request, and more about his pathway to sobriety. We also get a list of names of those citizens who vouched and certified for Samuel. You may actually run across some familiar names here as well. And don't forget to use that volume 2 of this index, which focused specifically on those who vouched for the applicant. On the right is Mary A. B.'s application. And in addition to similar information I got for Samuel Bemis, it was really interesting to note that she listed herself as a grass widow. And that essentially meant that her husband had abandoned her. Another excellent publication from the Sonoma County Genealogical Society is the 2-volume index to Superior Court records. So what you want to do is start with the first section of the book to find the name of the person, and it's arranged alphabetically. Then take note of either the plaintiff or defendant suit numbers, depending upon what you want to look at. Let's use George P. Delahunty as an example. We have suit numbers 3548 and 3632. From there, I turn to the back part of the book and search by the suit number. George Delahunty was tried for assault with a deadly weapon on May 1st, 1894. The arrow points to the volume and page number that can then be used to find the original documents at the Sonoma County Superior Court Archived Records Division. Records can be obtained via mail or in person, and I've included all that information in your handout. I also included a newspaper excerpt I found, which is in the upper left-hand corner, and we're going to touch on newspapers in a little bit. Next is the Voting Register of 1890. Voter fraud was a big problem in the 1800s, and California implemented registration and recording to cut down on this issue. This publication contains wonderful information like naturalizations, occupations, where the person was originally from. For example, above, John Ludwig Peters, who's 53 years old, was born in Germany and is a farmer here in Sonoma County. He was naturalized in 1863 in Tuolumne County. That can be incredibly helpful information when you are tracing your ancestors' migration to a new country. The Sonoma County Genealogical Society extracted this information from the overall California voting register of 1890. You'll see above also that there's quite a few abbreviations, and those will all be defined in the front of this book. Another fascinating book is the Coroner's Inquest from 1852 to 1898. This one offers a great summary of investigations into Sonoma County deaths. You can view the summary for all recorded inquests, like the one for Daniel Tefro above, who died of suffocation while cleaning a wine tank in 1889. Some of the other deaths shown above are a little more nefarious. Before we leave the History and Genealogy Library, I want to mention that they have all of the physical copies of this wonderful local resource called the Sonoma Searcher, produced by the Sonoma County Genealogical Society. If you have ties to Sonoma County, I would consider this a pot of gold. The publication touched on all aspects of Sonoma County and its residents and was intended to be a comprehensive genealogical resource for this area. You're welcome to come in and start going through these newsletters in person, but a great tip is coming up in a few slides. Now, before we move over to the Sonoma County Genealogical Society, let's take a little segue to look at Sonoma County records at Family Search. This is one of the links from Simone, and I mention it not only because of its vast resources, but many of the records will tie back to Sonoma County resources, such as the History and Genealogy Library. I imagine many of you have free accounts at Family Search, but if you've never heard of this site, it is the premier free site that is created and hosted by the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. I've provided information on using the Family Search website in your handout. Now, this example I'm showing you above will work for all over the world, but let's focus on Sonoma County today. Start with the main page at Family Search's website, click Search and choose Card Catalog. Type in United States, California, Sonoma. When you do this, you're going to see that you get a large list of publications. You're also going to see at the top of the page that there's also an option to filter by a town within Sonoma County. Let's use deeds from 1847 to 1901 as an example. This is a magnificent collection, so I just started paging through the digital copies. Ironically, I landed on a deed by Lizzie Armstrong, who was the daughter of Colonel Armstrong of Armstrong Woods in Guerneville fame. The deed shows her transaction of a land sale from 1896. A $10 gold coin was the amount paid for the property. Now, if you have never viewed deeds to land before, they are fascinating documents, and they can tell you an awful lot about your family history. Now, these records were not indexed by name, so I was just paging through them. But let me cover something very helpful and very exciting at Family Search. If you are new or have not been there lately, they now have an amazing AI-generated search that includes a lot of their unindexed records. From the homepage, click on Family Search Labs, then expand your search with full text, and from there, type in your search terms, and voila, I got the same record I had previously found and many more for Lizzie, but I didn't have to scroll through all of the pages to get there. Let's look at one more from Family Search before we leave this. Probate records and wills from 1852 to 1955 is another excellent find that you can peruse from the comfort of your home. For new users, the camera icon you see on the right hand of the slide means you can view the records online. I chose a random example to share. What was important to people in their wills is very interesting. This one from around 1885 is fascinating because John Evans wrote the will while he was in England and then had it transferred here to Sonoma County. The first part said his wife can stay in the home as long as the wear and tear she puts into the home is at a reasonable amount. He bequeathed her his china and liquor collection and his dead stock chattel, which is basically his unused excess inventory, but not any of his money or securities. Check out the links in your handout, and after checking these out, you might want to give that AI search a try. Not to be overlooked is our own Sonoma County Genealogical Society. You may already be familiar with our society, but have you explored our wonderful website lately? From our homepage, you will see the research tab where the general public has access to a tremendous amount of information. Some great information is also on the members only link, such as the Sonoma Searcher magazine archive, past issues of the monthly newsletter, and the full indexes to Sonoma County publications. A shameless plug, the membership is only $30 a year and really offers a lot. So let's explore a few. The index of records shown above is open to the public. Each one of these is linked to an index of names for these records. You will see some crossover here with what we covered in our History and Genealogy Library section. Let's start with the early school attendance records that covers schools from 1858 until the 1920s and over 12,000 students. The online index on the list gives you the names of the students so you can actually check it for a name you're interested in. Then a trip to the History and Genealogy Library will allow you to look at the information on those same students in the alphabetic book of early school attendance records. That is shown on the lower right. You get a lot of additional information, such as the full name of the student, the address, parents' names, school attended, age and grade of student on entry, and if applicable on exit. Another fun index is the 1930 school census. Again, you can look on the online index, and then you can find the names of the people you want to view, and it's alphabetical, and you can come to the History and Genealogy Library and view the book to get some great information. So as you see above, some of the information is similar to what the last slide was, but you see a little bit more in this one. Then if you find where your person attended school, don't forget to look in the digital archives for photos of old schools. In this case, I found a wonderful picture of the old Forestville School from 1899. The Sonoma County land grants from 1841 to 1850 is an example of an index only available to members. Once you find a name, you can use the book and page number to view the actual image at the Clerk-Recorder's office, which we're going to cover in a minute. Now, I made this its own treasure. As I mentioned in a previous slide, the annex houses all copies of the Sonoma Searcher published from 1973 to 2016. As a member of the public, you can access the index to the Searcher on the Sonoma County Genealogical Society's website. The index encompasses the first 28 volumes out of 44 volumes. 29 through 44 are not indexed yet. The ones that are indexed are done so by both names and topics. Now here's what the web page looks like with the alphabetic index. If you click on a letter, you get a list of names and topics, and then what page and volume the person or topic will appear in the Sonoma Searcher. Here's an example using a search on Cynthia Alma. From the information showing me the volume number and page number, which you can see at the bottom of the slide, As a Sonoma County Genealogical Society member, I can go directly to that entire digital publication. Now, if you're not a member, again, you can also access the paper copies at the History and Genealogy Library. And you just never know what you will unearth in the Sonoma Searcher. This was such entertaining information on the class of 1890 from Santa Rosa High. Wouldn't it be fun to find your ancestor here? I wonder what happened to self-described fickle John M. Laughlin and if he ever got married. Before we tear ourselves away from the searcher, I want to cover an example of searching by topic. I used the searcher index to search for churches, and as you can see, there are many references. As an example, let's look at the Church of the Incarnation. When I went to the issue of the Sonoma Searcher online, it also showed me the locations for some of the old church records. It looked like the film was available on microfilm at the History and Genealogy Library. And sure enough, when I visited, I did find the film. The good news is that many have been digitized already, but some of the others on historical church records still exist on microfilm, which can be viewed at the History and Genealogy Library. They can include baptisms, marriages, confirmations, and burials for the churches. The History and Genealogy Library also has many church history books published by congregations, and especially those celebrating significant anniversaries. Also above from the library's digital collection, this is the interior of the Church of the Incarnation from 1881. Now, this is a wonderful way to tie together records and images. Not only might you find the marriage record of a family member, but from the image, you can actually view the altar where they took their vows. Before we leave Sonoma County Genealogical Society, I want to mention the newsletter archive going back to 2009. The public can always view the index, which highlights the main articles in that publication. But as a member, you can also access a full copy of all newsletters that you can view and download. Now, who would have thought the permit department would be a destination for Sonoma County history? But indeed they are. Historic preservation is more than just preserving sites and structures. It is about saving an historic district so that the fabric of a community is sustained and can be a constant reminder of our heritage. The permit department provides oversight of our historic districts, such as Occidental, Freestone, and buildings like the Superintendent's House at Sonoma State Hospital and the Calabasas Creek Bridge, which you can see in the lower right. Now let me share an example. I clicked on Dry Creek Valley from the permit department's website, and there was a list of items to explore. I chose the schools and was treated to detailed information on all of those tiny schools that dotted the landscape. There were anecdotal stories and wonderful histories. I love this one that spoke of Frederick Patronak, who volunteered his granddaughter to drive the students into Healdsburg in her hand-cranked Ford so they would have access to high school education. I then found the photo above of the Dry Creek Valley School in the Sonoma County Digital Archives we spoke of earlier. A very cool discovery at the permit department site was information on the very well-defined Italian community. While in 1870, only one person of Italian descent is listed in the census, by 1889, the number of Italian people living in Santa Rosa was 200. Mostly from Tuscany, the fine hand of the Toscano workmen would change the face of the land with stone wineries, hop kilns, and beautiful hotels. The Hotel La Rose in Old Railroad Square is a fine example. If you have Italian ancestry, this information is a must-read. It even contains a list of all Italian residents, as you can see on the right-hand side above. The entire section of historical resources by the Permit Department is a potpourri of rich cultural information that is deeply focused on the people and communities that make up Sonoma County. Now let's turn to one that you may not have thought about. I have mentioned the Clerk-Recorder's office when we talked about obtaining images of deeds in a previous slide. And you might not have thought about these places as genealogy resources, but they are. The slide above shows a synopsis of what the Sonoma County offices oversee. The Clerk-Recorder's office and the assessor's offices merged in 2001, making it more efficient, but sometimes it can be a little confusing where to initially go for things. With their official records web search, as you can see in the pink box above, you can search and purchase many records going back to 1964. Examples include deeds, changes in ownership, death reports, defaults, liens, and much more. An example of one is on the right. Now, generally, you won't see images from this search, but that can be easily purchased once you find what you are looking for. Just click on the purchase button that will show up on the upper right-hand side, and you have many options as to what and how to purchase and receive these. I wanted to also mention that these are public documents, so anyone can view and purchase them. Now let's turn to the older documents. For example, you can use Search 1830 to 1963 Grantor-Grantee Official Records Index. It's available on that same web service. Once you find the name of your person, you can use the book and page number of the recorded document, and it's pictured in the red box above, and view the document in their office. The older documents are digitized in what is called digital reel, which is viewable it's not viewable online, it's viewable in person only. If you can't come to the office, you can use their PDF form and order a copy via mail. They are working hard to get all of these indexes and images from all these documents online by mid-2025, which is really exciting for us. Now let's talk about maps. The assessor's office keeps parcel maps for tax purposes, and they can be very useful for your family research. Using the assessor's map portal link in your handout, you can search by address. Once you get to the property, you can click on View Maps, and it's a little finicky, so sometimes you're going to have to try different names and abbreviations for your address search. But as you can see above, it's really incredible what you get back. Especially in rural areas, it's really fun to see how the properties were laid out. Now, for a true bonus, if you would like to view the original assessor's index books and property information prior to 1925, this is really a treat. There are a few steps involved, and for now, again, it has to be done in person at the assessor's office, but well worth it if you want to see things for your ancestor, like the land description, other owners, acres of pastures, vines, fruits, and timber. An example of what you might find is above. The assessor's office also hopes to have this available online in 2025. Now, I've put a link to a document in your handout created by Amanda King, who is the chief deputy at the assessor's office. This amazing document is a step-by-step, easy to follow process with wonderful photographs to get to these old documents. So if you have anybody that you want to research old land, I strongly encourage you to give this a try. Now on to the Historical Records Commission. They promote the preservation and access of historical records. They interact with many groups in fulfilling their mission, and their website provides access to other libraries, archives, and historical societies. For example, the links above will take you to a variety of archives, including the California State Archives, the Petaluma Museum History Library, or the Windsor Historical Society. I found through the Windsor Historical Society site that they actually had a POW camp during World War II, and I had no idea. You just never know what you're going to find. Now, we've touched on the Sonoma County Archives under the History and Genealogy sections. The Historical Records Commission and the History and Genealogy Library collaborate on the care and oversight of these records. Some are actually at the library, but most are off-site and can be obtained and viewed by the public. The Online Archive of California, which is, the link is in your handout, is very user-friendly to view what's in the collection. If they show a little eyeball beside the entry of the collection, and you'll see that little red arrow above, that tells you that some of the information is actually online. You'll want to drill down and read what is in the collection. There's also a link to a really helpful video in the handout that the library produced. The video cited examples of what people are using these collections for nowadays: climate change, Sonoma County coroner's records, fact-checking in past city and county records of all types, and business information. For example, above, the Pedersen's Furniture Store company records were given to the Sonoma County Archives when they closed. I clicked on the link and read about the collection, and you can see that above. First, there was a nice summary and history of the company, which was founded in 1892 by Jens Christian Pedersen, a Danish immigrant and cabinet maker. The collection includes family photographs, advertisements, letters, and ephemera documenting the history of the company. An interesting fact that furniture stores, including Pedersen's, created undertaking supplies and caskets in the early days. If you had relatives who worked for this beloved company that was in business for 127 years, you can actually contact the History and Genealogy Library to view these original records in person. Now, this is really going to tie together a lot of what we've covered together. One of my favorite items from the Historical Records Commission was this truly collaborative document entitled Researching the History of a Sonoma County Property, which is found under the publication section at the Historical Records Commission. This guide with links to invaluable resources is a must for anyone who would like to research their home or an ancestral home in Sonoma County. You may be interested in who the past residents or tenants were, or what other uses the property may have had over time. Even if your home is not old, the property it was built on may have had an interesting history. In addition to the links to get free parcel maps, vintage aerial images going back to 1940, access to building records and deeds, plan on getting lost in this information. To demonstrate, I picked a home in Sonoma County that I knew was built a long time ago and used it to check out some of these resources. Let's take a look. Using a link to historic properties in Sonoma County from this publication, I picked a home of interest at 759 Mendocino Avenue, and you can see the home on the left. I used to go by it most every day when I did my lunchtime walk. I found out it was built in 1871 by E.L. Davis. From the aerial view link in this publication, I found the parcel shown on the right, and in addition to the overview of the property, I found details on the map page. For some fun with this, try your own address here at the historical aerials link. The red arrow shows where to enter your address once you follow the link. Then I looked at a few more links to learn more. If you haven't viewed the Sanborn maps, they are so interesting. They were originally created by insurance companies in the 1800s and early 1900s to know what buildings, homes, and structures they were insuring. They contain incredible detail, and you will want to follow the key on the map to know what you were looking at. This 1904 Sanborn map shows the property at 759 Mendocino, which was actually called Healdsburg Avenue back then. You can see the little box on the lower right. You can see the D in the largest building, and that stands for dwelling. You can also see the greenhouse and other outbuildings. Sanborn maps show what the structures were made of, the number of windows, the number of stories, and I have not even scratched the surface. I put a link to online Sanborn maps and how to interpret them in your handout. But if you want to see them in person, the History and Genealogy Library has the actual versions for some for Santa Rosa and Petaluma. This was also a good find through the links provided. This is the 1892 Block Book of Santa Rosa at the History and Genealogy Library. All block books are actually available for all the years they were created in the assessor's office. So if you need to go outside of this year, you can find them there. As neighborhoods were being built, this great book captured drawings of the properties and names of the owners. For 759 Healdsburg Mendocino Avenue, you can see that Davis is listed as the property owner, and it looks like he had about 100 acres at the time. The red arrow on the right points to the address of 759. Newspapers were also mentioned in the publication as a good place to look. Our library has access to many newspaper collections that are free for you to use. There's also a link to the California Digital Newspaper Archives that is free and contains many historic Sonoma County newspapers that is in your handout. Now, when doing a search in newspapers, you can also try searching for your property by address. And especially that's true if you don't know the original owner's names. You can see in the various newspaper articles regarding E.L. Davis, and that I also found one where they were looking for some help in their house, and I got that one by using the address search. Then it's really important. Don't forget to tie in some of the earlier resources we've explored in the slides. I went back and searched for E.L. Davis in the Sonoma Searcher Index and found an article that covered his marriage to Nancy Freeland, and you can see that in the lower left-hand part of the slide. You can see that I was able to tie together the name of his stepson, Albert Freeland, in the newspaper article from 1875 in the upper left to his wife's surname of Freeland when he married her. So back to 759 Mendocino Avenue. I knew it might appear in the 1877 Sonoma County Atlas. I referenced that earlier, and that was one of the links listed in this publication. I was so excited when I found a listing for the property, which also included E.L. Davis, who I then learned was a farmer and a real estate agent who had come from Alabama. He came to Sonoma County in 1862 and had 171 acres of land in Sonoma County. But that was not the most exciting part. From that same atlas, I actually found a pencil drawing of his home and farm with the same home that is there today. So in closing, I love that I could picture E.L. Davis standing in the field next to his home. If you look closely at the picture, I envision that might be his wife Nancy on the porch and one of their children standing off to the left. From all of the resources in the publication entitled Researching the History of a Sonoma County Property and all of the other amazing resources we have covered, you can create your own family story. Combined together, this offers us an intimate glimpse into our homes and families whose footprints will always be part of the fabric of Sonoma County.